the silence behind the walls. The sirens cut through the dawn like blades. On the outskirts of Tekaluka, where the heat already clung to the air, a black pickup swerved off the road and slammed into a concrete barrier. The engine coughed once, then died. By the time the police reached the wreck, the driver's door was open, the seats soaked with blood, and the man behind the wheel was gone. What made the scene explode into chaos wasn't the crash. It was the patch sewn onto the torn jacket left behind on the asphalt. CECOT, the Center for Terrorism Confinement, El Salvador's most feared prison. The mega facility the world couldn't stop watching. The message was impossible to ignore. Someone connected to the most secure prison in the Western Hemisphere had just vanished. Detective Mateo Ibarra arrived an hour later, long after the road had been sealed and the sun had fully risen. He stood quietly, hands on his hips, eyes scanning the wreckage. Ibarra had spent 20 years chasing gang leaders, smugglers, and men who believed fear was currency. But CECOT was different. CECOT was supposed to be the end of the line. Who was he? Ibarra asked. A junior officer swallowed. Luis Moreno. Civilian contractor. Logistics and supply coordination. Ibarra's jaw tightened. Contractors weren't inmates. They weren't supposed to be part of the story. Moreno had last been seen leaving CECOT after a late shift. His phone last pinged near the crash site. No calls for help. No signs of a struggle beyond the blood and the abandoned jacket. It looked less like an accident and more like an erasure. Within hours, the Ministry of Justice issued a short statement. Moreno was missing. An investigation was underway. No further details, but details had a way of leaking. CECOT loomed like a concrete ocean liner in the middle of nowhere, ringed by electrified fences, watchtowers, and armed patrols. Inside were thousands of men labeled as the most dangerous criminals in the country, gang leaders, enforcers, repeat offenders. No contact with the outside world. No visits. No mercy. The government called it order. Critics called it a pressure cooker. Inside the facility, Chief Warden Rafael Aguilar watched the news replay footage of the crash. He muted the television when the camera zoomed in on the jacket. That shouldn't be out there, he said quietly. Aguilar was a disciplined man, a believer in structure and silence. He had helped design CECOT's internal systems, movement schedules, blind spots eliminated, routines so strict they felt mechanical. Chaos wasn't part of the plan. Yet that morning, chaos had slipped through the cracks. By noon, Detective Ibarra was standing inside CECOT's administrative wing, passing through layers of security that felt more like rituals than procedures. Scanners, armed guards, biometric locks. Every step reminded him that whatever truth he was chasing lived behind walls built to bury it. Warden Aguilar greeted him with a measured smile. "We're cooperating fully."
"I'm sure you are," Ibarra replied.
"But one of your people disappeared after leaving this place." Aguilar corrected him. "A contractor. Still your responsibility." Aguilar hesitated, just long enough to be noticed. Moreno had access to supply routes and internal schedules, but he wasn't cleared for inmate interaction. Yet he wore a CECOT patch, Ibarra said. The warden's eyes flicked away. That afternoon, Ibarra reviewed Moreno's personnel file. Clean record. No criminal history. Recently divorced. Financially stable. But one line stood out, an internal note filed 2 weeks earlier. Irregular inventory discrepancies. Pending review. Discrepancies meant something was moving that shouldn't be. When Ibarra requested security footage from the night Moreno disappeared, he was told there was a problem. A system outage. 15 minutes of missing video near the outer gate. 15 minutes. Ibarra repeated. "At the most secure prison in the country?" Aguilar's voice hardened. "We're looking into it." Outside the prison, whispers were already spreading. Journalists camped near the perimeter. International observers demanded transparency. Online, people argued whether CECOT was a necessary evil or a human rights disaster waiting to implode. Inside, something was already imploding. That evening, a guard named Diego Salas failed to report for duty. His locker was untouched. His phone went straight to voicemail. Unlike Moreno, Salas had last been seen inside CECOT. Now 2 men were gone. Ibarra felt the clock speeding up. Missing people connected to a place designed to make people disappear permanently. He requested a full internal audit. The warden pushed back. That kind of scrutiny could destabilize operations.
Or expose them, Ibarra said.
Late that night, a maintenance supervisor quietly slipped an envelope under Ibarra's hotel door. Inside was a flash drive and a handwritten note. If you want to know what happened to Moreno, don't trust the logs. The drive contained partial surveillance footage, recorded off-system. Grainy, shaky, but clear enough. It showed Moreno inside a restricted corridor hours before his disappearance. He wasn't alone. A uniformed guard walked beside him, followed by another man in civilian clothes. The timestamp glitched. The corridor lights flickered. Then the camera angle shifted, revealing a steel door marked with a code Ibarra didn't recognize. The door opened. What lay beyond wasn't listed on any official blueprint. Ibarra leaned back, pulse pounding, because that door led to a section of CECOT that, according to every document he'd seen, didn't exist. And if that hidden wing was real, then Moreno hadn't escaped something. He'd stumbled into it. The wing that wasn't there. The hidden corridor changed everything. Detective Mateo Ibarra stood in the dim light of his hotel room, replaying the footage frame by frame. The steel door. The unfamiliar code. The way Moreno hesitated before stepping inside, as if he already knew he shouldn't be there. This wasn't a random disappearance. It was a breach inside a fortress built to prevent exactly that. By sunrise, Ibarra was back at CECOT. This time, the atmosphere felt different. Tighter. Guards moved with sharper urgency, rifles held just a little higher. The warden greeted him with the same calm expression, but the silence between his words felt heavier. "You didn't mention a restricted wing," Ibarra said, placing a still image from the video on the table. Aguilar stared at it longer than necessary. "There are legacy areas. Unused sections from early construction." "Unused," Ibarra repeated. "Or unofficial?" Aguilar stood. "Detective, this prison exists to neutralize threats, not to entertain conspiracy theories. But conspiracies don't leave video evidence." Ibarra requested access to architectural plans. What he received was incomplete, blueprints ending abruptly, hallways that led nowhere. The deeper he looked, the clearer it became that CECOT wasn't just one prison. It was layers of intention stacked on top of each other. And someone had been operating between those layers. Meanwhile, outside the walls, pressure was mounting. A local journalist, Sofia Mendez, had begun digging into Moreno's background. She uncovered something the official files didn't emphasize. Moreno had recently filed an internal complaint. He claimed he'd been ordered to reroute supply shipments without documentation. Food, medical kits, restraints, and sedatives. Sofia shared her findings with Ibarra in a quiet cafe miles away from the prison. "He was scared," she said. He told a coworker that something inside CECOT wasn't meant to be seen. Not even by staff. "Did he say what?" Ibarra asked. She shook her head. Just that people were being moved. Not transferred. Erased. Inside CECOT, another problem surfaced. Inmate counts from one housing block didn't align with intake records. 3 detainees appeared on no recent transfer lists, yet their cells were empty. When questioned, guards gave rehearsed answers. Administrative errors. Database delays. Nothing unusual. But Ibarra had learned a long time ago, when everyone says the same thing, someone taught them to. Then came the warning. A folded note appeared on his windshield that night, tucked beneath the wiper. No name. No signature.
"Stop digging."
Moreno didn't. The next morning, Diego Salas's phone was found near the prison perimeter, smashed beyond repair. Forensics confirmed it had been deliberately destroyed. Salas hadn't just gone missing. He'd been silenced. Ibarra pushed harder. He requested interviews with night shift guards assigned near the restricted corridor. Most denied knowing it existed. One man refused to speak at all. Another broke. "He wasn't supposed to be there," the guard whispered, eyes darting toward the door. "Moreno. He saw the transports." What transports? Ibarra asked. Internal. After midnight. Inmates taken off the books. No cameras. No records. Where were they taken? The guard swallowed. Down. That word echoed louder than any confession. Ibarra finally forced Aguilar's hand. Under threat of international oversight, the warden authorized a supervised inspection of the so-called unused section. They descended through a service elevator that didn't appear on any public map. The air grew colder. The lights dimmer. At the bottom, the corridors stretched out clean and clinical, nothing like the overcrowded cell blocks above. Doors lined the walls, each sealed, each silent. No names. No numbers. Just locks. A technician accessed one terminal. The screen flickered to life, revealing internal files marked special containment. Inside were profiles. Faces blurred. Charges redacted. And statuses. Most read, indefinite hold. One read, deceased. Ibarra felt his chest tighten. These people were never sentenced here. Aguilar's voice was flat. They were deemed ongoing threats. To whom? Ibarra snapped. The courts never approved this. The warden didn't answer. Then the technician froze. Sir, this file just updated. A new name appeared at the top of the list. Luis Moreno. Status. Active. Ibarra turned sharply. Active means alive. Before anyone could respond, alarms blared. Not the deafening chaos of a riot, but a controlled, internal alert. Doors slammed shut. The corridor lights shifted to red. Aguilar reached for his radio. Who triggered containment? A voice crackled back, distorted. Unauthorized access detected. Ibarra realized too late what was happening. The inspection hadn't been approved. It had been bait. Somewhere above them, systems were locking down. Evidence was being wiped. And anyone standing in this corridor had just crossed from investigator to liability. As armed guards poured into the hallway, Ibarra locked eyes with Aguilar. You didn't just build a prison, he said. You built a black hole. Aguilar's expression didn't change. And now you're standing too close to the edge. The guards closed in. And deep within CECOT, a man officially listed as missing was still alive, watching everything unfold. The cost of silence. The lockdown lasted 9 minutes. That was all it took for the system to reset itself. Doors reopening, alarms dying, red lights fading back to sterile white. Officially, it was logged as a containment drill. Unofficially, it was a warning. Detective Mateo Ibarra was escorted out of the restricted wing without handcuffs, without threats, and without answers. That was the most unsettling part. If they wanted him gone, they could have buried him in procedure. Instead, they let him walk, because they believed the truth would never leave the walls. That night, Ibarra didn't sleep. He cataloged everything in his head. The missing footage, the ghost inmates, the files that updated themselves in real time. And Luis Moreno, alive, hidden, classified as active inside a place designed to erase names. By morning, the ministry announced Moreno had been located and was assisting authorities. No images. No statements. Just a sentence meant to end curiosity. It didn't. Sofia Mendez published her story anyway. She didn't accuse. She documented. Discrepancies in records. Inmates without court orders. Contractors vanishing after internal complaints. She ended with a question that echoed across social media and international newsrooms. What happens when a prison operates beyond the law meant to contain it? The backlash was immediate. Supporters of CECOT called it necessary. Critics called it criminal. Foreign governments requested briefings. Human rights organizations demanded access. And inside CECOT, someone panicked. That evening, a fire alarm triggered in the administrative wing. Smoke filled one corridor, controlled, localized, just enough to force evacuation protocols. During the confusion, a single transport vehicle exited through a service gate. It wasn't logged. Ibarra was already moving. A contact inside traffic control flagged the vehicle's route before it disappeared from the network. Ibarra followed alone, the road stretching into darkness, the prison shrinking in his rear-view mirror. The transport stopped at an abandoned processing facility miles away, an old concrete structure left over from a failed infrastructure project. Inside, Ibarra found evidence of recent use. Medical equipment, restraints, files burned halfway through. And in a locked room at the back, he found Luis Moreno.
Alive. Thin. Shaking.
Moreno didn't look like a criminal. He looked like a man who had learned too much. They said it was temporary. Moreno whispered, voice raw. Special containment. No records. No lawyers. Just gone.
Who?
Ibarra asked. People they couldn't release and couldn't convict, Moreno said. Witnesses. Gang mediators. Informants who outlived their usefulness. And Salas. Ibarra pressed. Moreno's eyes dropped. He tried to help me leave. Footsteps echoed outside. Ibarra turned just as Chief Warden Aguilar stepped into the doorway, flanked by guards. His expression wasn't angry. It was resigned. You should have stayed out of it, Aguilar said. You crossed a line, Ibarra replied. There is no legal framework for what you built. Aguilar sighed. There is when the alternative is chaos. Moreno flinched. You said we were protecting people. We were, Aguilar said quietly. The public. From threats the courts can't neutralize fast enough. Ibarra stepped forward. By becoming the threat yourself? For a moment, no one moved. Then Aguilar nodded to the guards. They didn't raise their weapons. They lowered them. Sirens approached in the distance, real ones this time. Not drills. Not internal alerts. Sofia Mendez had done more than publish. She had leaked documents. Server logs. Copies of the special containment files Ibarra thought had been wiped. International pressure had become unavoidable. Aguilar closed his eyes. It was supposed to be invisible, he said. Effective. Controlled. Nothing built on silence stays invisible, Ibarra replied. Aguilar surrendered without resistance. The fallout was immediate and global. Investigations were launched. Oversight committees formed. Officials resigned. The hidden wing was sealed, then unsealed, then documented for the first time. Some detainees were released. Others were formally charged. A few names remained classified, their fates unresolved. CECOT still stood. The walls didn't come down. The guards didn't disappear. But the myth of absolute control cracked. Luis Moreno entered witness protection. Diego Salas was officially declared dead, his family given answers years too late. Warden Aguilar faced trial, not as a monster, but as a man who believed order justified secrecy. Months later, Ibarra stood outside the prison one last time, watching the sun set behind concrete and wire. CECOT was still the most watched prison in the world, not because of what it held, but because of what it had tried to hide. And as the gates closed for the night, one truth lingered heavier than the steel doors themselves. Justice doesn't fail loudly. It fails quietly until someone refuses to stop listening. If you think this story was intense, the next one goes even deeper. Don't miss it.